So, I guess I need to get this off my chest because I'm literally still shaking with anger. My family has always been complicated. I'm the middle child, older brother James, 38 me, and younger sister Adeline, 29. I've always been the disappointment. Despite literally making the most money in the family, I work in fintech, not gonna get specific. I bought my own place last year. Nothing crazy, but a decent 2-bedroom condo that I'm proud of. My parents and siblings have always made these little digs about how I waste my money because I invest in crypto and collect vintage gaming systems, instead of growing up, like James with his wife and 2 kids in the suburbs, or Adeline, who's been planning her wedding to Harvey for like 3 years. Anyway, at Christmas dinner last year, everything went to hell. We were all at my parents' place, and my mom kept asking when I was going to settle down and find someone. I was just brushing it off like I always do. But then Adeline started going off about how no woman would want a guy who lives like a teenager. I tried to laugh it off, but she wouldn't stop. She literally said, in front of everyone, including extended family, that I was a pathetic clown who would die alone surrounded by plastic toys and computer screens. My dad just nodded along while my mom tried to change the subject. James just stared at his plate. Nobody stood up for me. I just got up and left early. Didn't even stay for dessert. Got a few texts from mom later, saying I was overreacting and needed to learn to take a joke. Fast forward to January. Adeline calls me out of nowhere. We hadn't spoken since Christmas, saying she and Harvey were having budget issues with their wedding. She wanted me to contribute $80,000 to her dream wedding in June. I literally laughed like, "Are you serious?" The same person who humiliated me in front of our whole family now wants me to bankroll her wedding. I told her I wouldn't be giving her a cent after how she treated me. She started crying, saying I was ruining her special day and that family helps family. The calls and texts started rolling in. Mom saying I needed to be the bigger person. Dad saying I was being selfish. James telling me to just help her out, man. Apparently, they'd all already promised vendors and put deposits down, assuming I would pay just because I have the most disposable income. They'd been telling people I was covering it. I stood my ground, blocked all of them for a few weeks when it got too intense. I did eventually get an invitation to the wedding, probably my mom's doing, but I didn't RSVP. Figured I'd go just to show I wasn't bitter. Big mistake. I showed up at this fancy venue last Saturday, invitation in hand. Security stopped me at the door, saying my name was on a do not admit list. I showed them the gold embossed invitation with my name on it. They called my mom over. She actually said, "Are you kidding me? You actually showed up." Her face was all red, and she was like physically shaking. I calmly explained I was invited. She got in my face, saying, "That was before you showed your true selfish colors, you piece of shit." Dad rushed over, started yelling about how I'm 34, but still playing video games in that crappy apartment, and how I'm an embarrassment to the family. I tried to stay calm, but I was getting pissed. I'm not ashamed of my life choices. Then Adeline comes running out in her wedding dress, mascara already running, screaming, "Get him the hell out. He's ruining everything." Harvey and his groomsmen were watching from the doorway, smirking. One of them muttered something about the broke brother, loud enough for me to hear. James grabbed my shoulder pretty hard and said, "Dude, you're embarrassing yourself. Nobody wants your cheap ass here." Then Harvey came over, grinning, and was like, "So this is the loser brother who couldn't even help his own sister?" Adeline spit out. Unfortunately, he'd rather hoard his money than support his family. My mom turned to the security guard and said, "Remove this disappointment from my sight now." 2 guards literally grabbed my arms and dragged me through the venue, past like 200 staring guests. My dad yelled after me, "I tell people I have 2 children. You don't exist to me." They literally threw me onto the pavement. As I got up, brushing off my suit, I started planning the most devastating revenge they would never see coming. A week later, at 2 a.m., my phone went insane. 73 missed calls, messages flooding in. "Please answer. We're sorry. It's an emergency." I haven't responded yet, but I'm about to make them regret ever treating me this way. I'll update when I figure out what's happening and execute my plan. Update 1. Hey, typing truths. So, it's been about 2 weeks since my last post about getting thrown out of my sister's wedding. First, thanks for all the comments and support. I didn't expect so many people to relate to my situation. So, remember those 73 missed calls I mentioned? I finally decided to listen to some of the voicemails, and holy crap, you guys. I've never heard my family sound so desperate. My mom left like 12 messages, each one more panicked than the last. The first few were still kind of hostile. We're so disappointed in you. How could you embarrass us? Blah blah. But by message 7, she was literally sobbing about how they needed my help. Just this once. And how family has to stick together in times of crisis. I ignored them for another day. Petty. Yeah. Satisfying? Absolutely. Finally, I texted. Not called, just texted, my brother James, asking what the emergency was. His response was interesting. He sent back just 3 words. Financial nuclear meltdown. So I called him, figured he'd be the least dramatic about it. And what he told me was mind-blowing. Apparently, Adeline and Harvey had been lying to everyone about their finances. They told my parents, his parents, all the wedding vendors, literally everyone, that I was covering most of the wedding costs. They'd signed contracts with caterers, florists, the venue, photographers, etc., with the promise that payment would come after the wedding. James said they'd maxed out 5 credit cards and taken a personal loan just to cover the deposits. They'd been counting on wedding gift money to make the first payments, but since they'd alienated so many people, including me LOL, they got way less cash than expected. The venue was threatening legal action if they didn't pay the remaining $60,000 by the end of the month. $60,000. That's not even counting the other vendors who were also demanding payment. I just sat there listening, occasionally saying, while James kept talking about how my parents had already emptied most of their retirement savings to cover some of the costs, and how Harvey's parents had backed out of helping because they were pissed about how expensive everything had gotten. When he finished, I just asked, "So, what exactly do you want from me?" James got real quiet, and then said they needed me to loan them money. Not just some money, all of the money. Like, the entire remaining balance for the wedding. I laughed. I couldn't help it. He got mad and was like, "This isn't funny, Xavier. They could lose their house." Apparently, Harvey and Adeline had taken out a second mortgage on their new house that they just bought last year as collateral for some of the wedding expenses. I told James the first needed to think about it and hung up. Then I just sat there in my crappy apartment, surrounded by my plastic toys, thinking about how rich this was. See, what none of them know is that I've done really well for myself. That crypto they all made fun of? Yeah, it's worth a lot now. I could pay off their entire debt without blinking. But why would I? I decided to meet with Adeline face-to-face. Told her to come to my place so she could explain the situation. I wanted to see her squirm. She showed up looking like a mess, hair unwashed, eyes all puffy, no designer clothes or perfect makeup like at the wedding. As soon as I opened the door, she started crying like ugly crying, saying how sorry she was for everything and how she and Harvey were about to lose everything, and could I please help them. I let her sit on my couch, the one she once called bachelor pad garbage, and just listened as she spilled everything. They'd spent over $120,000 on the wedding. $120,000 on a one-day event. The dress alone was $15,000. The flowers were $20,000. The venue was $65,000. The honeymoon they'd already taken to Bali was another $20,000. And the best part, Harvey had lost his job 3 months before the wedding. He'd been pretending to go to work, but was actually just sitting in coffee shops applying for jobs and getting rejected. So, they had zero income except for Adeline's part-time work at a boutique. I asked her why she'd been so horrible to me at Christmas, if she knew she was going to need my money. Her answer was revealing. She said she'd always been jealous of me. While she was struggling to make rent in her 20s, I was buying crypto and getting lucky. She said it wasn't fair that I had financial freedom while she was doing everything right. College, marriage, house, and still struggling. The Christmas blow-up happened because she just found out how much my portfolio was worth from my mom, who apparently snooped through my investment documents when she visited last year. She was angry that I hoarded my money instead of helping the family. I just sat there nodding, letting her talk herself into a corner. Then I asked the million-dollar question. So, after you insulted me, kicked me out of your wedding, and let our entire family humiliate me in public, you want me to give you tens of thousands of dollars? She had the audacity to say yes, because that's what family does. I smiled and told her I'd think about it, but I needed copies of all their financial documents, wedding contracts, loan agreements, everything. I said I couldn't consider helping without seeing the full picture. She immediately agreed, practically falling over herself to promise she'd get everything to me by tomorrow. After she left, I called my financial advisor. Not to arrange a transfer or loan, but to set up a very different kind of plan. See, I've decided that yes, I will help my dear sister and her husband, just not in the way they're hoping. Instead, I'm going to buy their debt from the vendors. My advisor confirmed it's possible. Many of these businesses would rather sell the debt at a discount than chase payment through collections or courts. I'll own what they owe, which means I'll control the payment terms, the interest rates, and most importantly, the consequences of non-payment. They wanted to make me feel small and worthless. Now I'll literally own them. And the best part, they'll never see it coming. They think I'm considering a gift or maybe a no-strings family loan. What they'll get is a legally binding financial relationship with payment terms that will keep them under my thumb for years. I've scheduled meetings with the venue and 3 largest vendors for next week. Once I own their debt, I'll invite the whole family over for dinner to share my solution to their problem. Can't wait to see their faces when they realize what's happening. I'll update when the plan is in motion. This is just the beginning. Update 2. Hey, typing truths. Opie here with another update on the family drama. So much has happened since my last post that I'm literally typing this at 3 a.m. because I can't sleep from all the adrenaline. First, those vendor meetings I mentioned, they went even better than I expected. Turns out, when businesses are facing the possibility of getting nothing from a couple who clearly can't pay, they're pretty open to negotiation. I managed to buy all the outstanding debt for about 70 cents on the dollar. That's still a lot of money, but totally worth it for what came next. I had my lawyer draw up formal debt transfer agreements, all legit and binding. By the end of last week, I officially owned all of Adeline and Harvey's wedding debt, about $87,000 worth. Then I invited everyone over for a family meeting at my place. Told them I had a solution to their financial crisis. My mom actually texted back, saying they were so relieved I was finally acting like family. LOL. I spent the day before cleaning my apartment and making it look extra nice. Even put away most of my gaming stuff and collectibles that they always mock. Not because I was ashamed, but because I wanted them focused on what was about to happen, not distracted by making their usual jabs. Sunday night, they all showed up. Mom, Dad, James, Adeline, and Harvey. Mom tried to hug me at the door, but I just stepped back and gestured them inside. The tension was already thick AF. They all sat down in my living room, looking nervous but hopeful. Dad kept glancing around like he was surprised my place wasn't a total disaster. James was on his phone until Mom smacked his arm. Adeline and Harvey were holding hands, trying to look grateful, but I could see the desperation in their eyes. I didn't offer drinks or snacks or anything, just sat down across from them with a folder in my hands and waited until the awkward silence got uncomfortable. Then I started by saying I'd reviewed all their financial documents and had come to a decision about how to handle the situation. Mom immediately started thanking me, saying she knew I'd do the right thing and how proud she was that I was stepping up. I let her finish, then opened the folder and took out the debt transfer agreements. I explained very calmly that I had purchased all of their wedding debt from the vendors. Every single penny they owed was now owed to me. It took a second for it to sink in. Mom looked confused. Dad started asking if this meant I had paid off their debts. Adeline just stared at me, slowly realizing what this actually meant. I smiled and said, "No, I haven't paid off anything. I've simply transferred who they owed the money to. Instead of owing various vendors, they now owe me. And as the debt holder, I get to set the terms." Harvey was the first to lose it. He jumped up, face all red, asking what kind of sick game I was playing. I stayed super calm and told him to sit down or leave my property immediately. He chose to sit. Then I laid out my terms. I would require monthly payments with 5% interest, which is actually lower than they would have gotten elsewhere, TBH. Any missed payment would result in an immediate report to credit agencies. I would require them to take financial literacy classes. And this was the best part. They would need to publicly acknowledge on their social media accounts that they had lied to their wedding vendors about who was paying. Adeline burst into tears. Mom started saying this was cruel and not what family does. Dad just sat there, looking stunned. I reminded them that I was being more generous than any bank would be. Then I asked them if they'd prefer I just send the debts to collections immediately. That shut them up pretty quick. I also mentioned that I had evidence of their fraud, claiming I would pay when they knew I wouldn't, and that this could potentially become a legal issue if they didn't comply with my terms. James, who had been quiet until then, actually asked if this was really necessary. Couldn't I just help them out without all the drama? That's when I pulled out my phone and played the video from the wedding, the one where they had me physically thrown out while calling me pathetic, a disappointment, etc. One of the guests had sent it to me after seeing my original post. It went kind of viral on our local FB groups after someone recognized the venue. They all looked away from the screen. Nobody could meet my eyes after that. I told them they had 48 hours to sign the agreements or I would send everything to collections, report the fraud to the appropriate authorities, and wash my hands of all of them forever. Then I showed them to the door. Mom tried to stay behind to talk sense into me, but I literally said, "Meeting's over," and closed the door in her face. The next day, the texts started rolling in. Dad called me vindictive and said I was tearing the family apart. Mom sent paragraph-long messages about forgiveness and family bonds. James just sent, "Not cool, bro." Adeline's messages were the most interesting, though. She started by begging, then moved to threatening, then finally admitted she and Harvey had been fighting nonstop since my bombshell. Apparently, he was blaming her for the whole situation, saying she should have been nicer to me and that her big mouth had cost them everything. I didn't respond to any of them, just waited. On Tuesday, the deadline, Harvey showed up alone at my door. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. He had the signed paperwork. As he handed it over, he tried to act tough, saying I might think I'd won, but that this would only make them stronger as a couple. I just nodded and said I looked forward to receiving their first payment on the 1st. After he left, I implemented the next phase of my plan. I reached out to our extended family, aunts, uncles, cousins, who had been at the wedding and seen me get thrown out. I simply sent them a brief explanation of what had actually happened. How Adeline and Harvey had lied to everyone about their finances, how they'd claimed I was paying when they knew I wasn't, how they'd spent money they didn't have on a wedding they couldn't afford. I didn't embellish or exaggerate, just laid out the facts. The response was immediate. Our family group chat exploded. Turns out Adeline and Harvey had borrowed money from several relatives, too, with vague promises of paying them back after Xavier contributes his share. Mom called me screaming that I was destroying Adeline's reputation and that I had no right to air family business. I reminded her that she seemed fine with publicly humiliating me at the wedding in front of these same people. Dad hasn't spoken to me directly, but I heard from my cousin that he's been complaining to anyone who will listen about his ungrateful son, while conveniently leaving out all the relevant details. James is caught in the middle. He texted yesterday, saying things are really bad at home. Mom and Dad are fighting because Dad blames Mom for spoiling Adeline all these years. Adeline and Harvey are apparently barely speaking. Their joint social media accounts have gone dark after they made the required posts acknowledging their lies, which they worded as vaguely as possible. But the best part, several of my aunts and uncles have reached out to me privately to apologize for believing the worst about me. My uncle, Dad's brother, even said he'd always thought my parents favored Adeline unfairly and was glad I was finally standing up for myself. This morning, I got an email from Harvey. Subject line, payment plan alternative. He's asking if they can do some kind of work to pay off the debt instead of monthly payments. Says their credit cards are maxed, and they're struggling to make their mortgage payment. I haven't responded yet. Part of me wants to offer them the most humiliating work I can think of. Another part thinks making them sweat a bit longer is the better move. What I do know is that their perfect little facade is crumbling, and it's happening faster than I expected. Harvey's been posting passive-aggressive stuff on LinkedIn about difficult times and unexpected financial setbacks. Adeline's best friend, who was maid of honor and super nasty to me at the wedding, has suddenly unfollowed both of them. My parents' 40th anniversary party next month is apparently now on hold because of family issues. Everything is falling apart for them, and honestly, I'm just getting started. The debt is just financial leverage. The real revenge is watching them face the consequences of their actions for perhaps the first time in their lives. I'll update again when there are more developments. Still deciding how to respond to Harvey's email. Final update. Typing truths. It's been a minute since my last update. Lots of stuff has happened, and TBH, I've been kind of busy enjoying my life for the first time in forever without family drama hanging over me. But I promised a final update, so here we are. So when I left off, Harvey had emailed asking about some kind of work option instead of making payments. I let him stew for like 3 days before responding. When I finally did, I told him I'd consider an alternative arrangement if he and Adeline came to my place to discuss it in person. They showed up looking like absolute garbage. Harvey's fancy watch was gone, probably pawned. Adeline's designer purse replaced with some Target tote. Dark circles under both their eyes. I invited them in and didn't offer any drinks or snacks or whatever, just got straight to business. I told them that yes, I would consider allowing them to work off some of the debt, but only under specific conditions. First condition. They had to explain to me in detail why they thought it was okay to treat me like crap for years and then expect me to bail them out. Harvey tried to speak for both of them with some BS about family misunderstandings, but I cut him off. I wanted to hear from Adeline directly. She started crying again, but I just sat there waiting. Finally, she admitted that she'd always been jealous of my freedom. While she felt trapped by expectations, our parents had always pushed her to be the perfect daughter, college, marriage, house, kids, while I was allowed to do whatever because I was a guy. She said she resented that I seemed happier than her despite not following the right path. When she found out how much money I had, it made her crazy with anger because she felt like she'd done everything right but was struggling, while I was playing with toys and computer money and succeeding. Harvey jumped in, saying they didn't mean for things to go so far at the wedding, but tensions were high and it just escalated. He actually tried to blame the security guards for being overzealous. LMAO. I asked why they had lied to everyone about me paying for the wedding when they knew I wouldn't. Adeline mumbled something about hoping I would change my mind, but Harvey finally admitted they had been desperate and thought they could pressure me into paying if they created enough expectations. Then I told them my terms for the work option. They would both have to make public apologies, not just vague posts, but detailed explanations of how they had lied and mistreated me. They would have to tell our parents and extended family the complete truth about their finances and their behavior, and they would have to attend financial counseling that I would choose and pay for. If they did all that, I would reduce the interest rate to 0 and extend the payment timeline. Harvey immediately started arguing that public apologies would ruin their reputations. Adeline just stared at the floor. I shrugged and said those were my terms, take it or leave it. Their monthly payment was due in a week, either way. They left without agreeing to anything. I figured that was that. 2 days later, my phone blew up with notifications. Adeline had posted a long, detailed apology on Insta, where she has like 2K followers, including most of our extended family and friends. She explained everything, the lies about who was paying, the humiliation at the wedding, their financial irresponsibility. She even admitted to being jealous of me for years and taking it out on me unfairly. Harvey posted something similar, but way more brief, on his LinkedIn. Still, it was public and tagged me, so that was something. James called me that night, saying our parents were freaking out. Apparently, they hadn't known the full extent of Adeline and Harvey's lies. They'd been told I had verbally agreed to pay for most of the wedding and backed out last minute. The next day, my parents showed up unannounced at my door. Dad looked pissed. Mom had clearly been crying. I almost didn't let them in, but decided to hear what they had to say. Dad started by demanding to know if I had forced Adeline to post that humiliating confession. I told him I had offered them a choice, public accountability or stick to the original payment plan. They chose the former. Mom asked why I was being so cruel to my own sister. That's when I lost it a little. I pulled out my phone, opened a folder labeled family, and showed them screenshots of years of text messages where they had put me down, dismissed my achievements, mocked my interests, and favored Adeline. I showed them the video of me being thrown out of the wedding again. I showed them the nasty messages they had sent me after I refused to pay for the wedding. Dad tried to grab my phone, but I pulled it back. He raised his hand like he was going to hit me, but I just stared him down and said if he touched me, I would call the police immediately. He backed off. Mom started crying harder, saying she didn't understand how things had gotten so bad. Dad muttered something about me always being difficult, but he seemed shaken. I told them both that I had finally realized something. They had never respected me because I didn't live my life the way they wanted. But that didn't make me wrong or less worthy of basic respect. I said I was done being the family punching bag, done being expected to bail everyone out while being treated like dirt, done with the double standards where Adeline was praised for everything while I was criticized for nothing. Then I showed them to the door. As they were leaving, Dad turned and asked if this meant I was cutting them off. I said that was up to them. If they wanted a relationship with me, it would have to be one based on mutual respect. Ball was in their court. 2 weeks went by. Adeline and Harvey started their financial counseling. They made their first payment on time. James texted occasionally with updates. Apparently, our parents were fighting a lot. Dad blamed Mom for spoiling Adeline. Mom blamed Dad for pushing Xavier away. Then the real bomb dropped. Harvey moved out. James called to tell me. Apparently, the stress of everything had been too much for their marriage. Harvey blamed Adeline for the financial mess. Adeline blamed Harvey for encouraging her to spend so much on the wedding. They were talking about divorce just 3 months after their $120,000 wedding. I didn't feel as satisfied as I thought I would. Don't get me wrong, I wasn't sad about it, just, I don't know, kind of empty, like the revenge was working too well, maybe. Then I got an email from Adeline. She asked if we could meet for coffee, just her, not Harvey or our parents. Against my better judgment, I agreed. She showed up looking completely different than the sister I knew. No designer clothes, no perfect makeup, hair in a simple ponytail. She seemed smaller somehow. She didn't try to manipulate me or cry or anything. She just said that everything falling apart had forced her to take a hard look at herself and her choices. She admitted she'd been living a life she thought she was supposed to want, not one she actually enjoyed. I asked about Harvey. She said they were separating and selling the house. She was moving into a small apartment and looking for a better job. She had realized that she had been using her relationship and the wedding as distractions from her own unhappiness. Then she said something that actually surprised me. She said she was envious of my courage to live life on my own terms despite family pressure, that she wished she'd been brave enough to do the same. I didn't know what to say to that. We sat in awkward silence for a minute. Then she asked if I would consider letting her pay off the debt through monthly payments without Harvey. She didn't ask for forgiveness or a discount, just wanted to take responsibility for her share. I said I'd think about it. A week later, my parents asked if they could come over to talk. I agreed, but set a 30-minute time limit. They seemed different, less confident, less judgmental. Dad actually apologized for how he'd treated me at the wedding and throughout my life. Said he had been taking out his own frustrations on me because I had the courage to live differently than he had. Mom admitted she had favored Adeline, and it wasn't fair. I didn't fully trust their sudden change of heart, but I appreciated the effort at least. As for Harvey and Adeline, they're officially divorcing. The house is on the market. Harvey got a job in another state and worked out a payment plan with me for his half of the debt. Adeline is sticking to the payment schedule for her half. James and I actually hang out now sometimes. He admitted he'd always gone along with the family dynamic because it was easier, but he respected how I stood up for myself. My parents are trying, in their awkward way. Dad sent me a message asking about one of my crypto investments. Mom stopped making comments about me finding a girlfriend. I've restructured the debt with both Adeline and Harvey to be more manageable for them, but I haven't forgiven it. That money represents years of disrespect and entitled behavior, and there's a price for that. Am I still angry? Yeah, sometimes. But mostly I feel free. For the first time in my life, my family sees me clearly. They might not like what they see, but they can't ignore it or dismiss it anymore. I've started dating someone I met at a gaming convention. She thinks my collection is cool and loves that I have my own place. We're taking it slow, but it's nice. So that's it, typing truths. My revenge wasn't about destroying my family, though it kind of did that anyway. It was about forcing them to face reality, who they are, who I am, and the consequences of how they've treated me. Turns out, the most devastating revenge wasn't the financial pressure or public humiliation. It was simply holding up a mirror and making them look at themselves. I don't know if we'll ever be a normal family. Probably not. But at least now, the relationships we do have are based on truth instead of lies and expectations. And my crappy apartment, full of toys, just upgraded to a nice townhouse with a dedicated game room. Turns out being the financially responsible one has its perks. Thanks for following this wild ride, typing truths. Guess even pathetic clowns get the last laugh sometimes. Typing Truths community, Xavier's story hits hard. The sting of being the family outcast, mocked for your choices, only to be expected to open your wallet when they need you. It's a betrayal that cuts deep. But Xavier's journey, turning that pain into a calculated stand for respect, shows the power of standing firm in your truth. It's a reminder that you don't have to conform to earn your place. And sometimes, the best revenge is living well and letting others face their own consequences. Thank you for being here, for sharing in these raw stories, and for supporting each other. If you've ever felt dismissed or undervalued, know that your worth isn't defined by others' expectations. Keep shining, and I'll see you in the next story, Typing Truths.